Episode: Getting Married in the West Indies. Mary and Catherine in Antigua, West Indies. Catherine and I decided to get married. We were not wealthy, but we wanted our marriage to be special. We managed to secure travel to a remote island in the West Indies, adjacent to the Caribbean, called Antigua. We did not have enough money to pay for guests to attend our wedding and did not want people to feel obliged to attend such a remote and expensive place to get to. And so we effectively eloped to Antigua to get married. Our journey to Antigua had a challenging start, actually. It had two challenging, notable start problems. Catherine's dress, tailored to her, was not ready to be picked up from the seamstress until the very last day before our flight. And compounding matters, Catherine was racing against work deadlines so that she could relax and enjoy her wedding moon, where we would be married and honeymoon in the same Antigua resort. Things were looking dire as the day came and evening was fast approaching. I managed to get a hold of the dry cleaning shop where her dress was being cleaned, that also did custom tailoring before they closed. Once more, the reason it was at the shop was to be cleaned and tailored. Well, I had obtained the contact information for the seamstress. With quite a few tries, I was ultimately able to reach the seamstress by phone and explain that we had a flight to Antigua and that we very much needed my fiancé's wedding dress, if at all possible, before we were to leave that night. Well, the seamstress gave me her home address. I was able to pick up the dress directly from her. Thank you, crisis averted. And then there was the second challenge. We had our takeoff time wrong by a few hours. Yeah, our flight to Antigua, we were mistaken for the flight time. There were very few flights to Antigua out of Florida. And so missing a flight to Florida meant missing nearly an entire week to get the next flight to Antigua. By the time we arrived at the airport, we were horrified to learn that we were wrong about our flight time. I am not sure how we were wrong. Perhaps we looked at the landing time offset by 3 hours in Florida versus California. Whatever the reason, we were wrong by 3 hours. There were huge, long lines just to check in and get through security, never mind boarding the plane. It was apparent we were not going to make it to our flight on time, which meant we would miss our Antigua trip by days to a week. Our wedding was seriously at risk. Desperate but solution-minded, I rudely left the check-in line and went straight towards check-in. I was intercepted by airport security, a marshal, whom directed me to return to the queue. But I explained our dire situation, that we were to be married, and missing our flight meant missing our wedding in the West Indies due to the limited connecting flights. Well, the marshal, the woman, took pity on me, on us. She smiled in support, and she went up and escorted Catherine and me to check-in and through security all of the way to the flight gate and up to the boarding doorway. We made it to our flight. As they closed the boarding doors behind us, it was awesome. We made it. I wonder if they had called ahead to make sure the plane was waiting for us after we had checked in, given our tragic tale of maybe missing our wedding. Well, in the end, we did make it to Antigua on schedule as originally planned. One might wonder if there was some subconscious effort on either of our part, somehow to slow things down or not get married at all. But I don't believe that. It was just a series of challenges and mistakes, just reinforcing a life of hell difficulty right up to getting married to my angel. to my beloved Catherine. Some interesting details. We flew to Antigua on a 737 jet, a pretty big jetliner. But Antigua had a tiny airport with a matching tiny, short takeoff and landing strip. Its runway was not appropriate for even a 737 to land. The landing was alarming. The plane landed and braked insanely hard. It was loud and frictionful and incredibly forward-leaning. You could hear the immense friction and tires narrowly skipping on the paved landing strip. And it approached a cliff, as if it would careen right off it down into the ocean below. But evidently, out of practice, the jet turned as it slowed, and after a full 180-degree turn, it taxied back to the airport, where we disembarked. Another interesting detail. The airport was mostly open. There was very little security, and the airport was inundated with cats. Cats were everywhere. Apparently, cats were nature's natural rodent control. The cats kept the airport clean of rodents, and therefore of their droppings and their disease. Cats were a blessing for Antigua. And it was cool for us, being cat lovers, to see so many cats free roaming inside the airport. Another random, also interesting detail from our trip. Oprah Winfrey owned a mansion on a smaller island just off Antigua's main island. Insanely, Oprah's house had a reverse waterfall. It had pumps that hurled water up into a higher water pool, looking like a waterfall that flowed upward, defying gravity. That was very visible, flaunted, excess wealth. Antigua was not what we expected. We envisioned a 5-star resort experience. However, it turns out a 5-star resort is more like a 3-star resort when you are on a remote island in the West Indies. We adjusted our expectations and thus afterwards had a great time. Yeah, sometimes you do have to adjust your expectations to have a great time, or even have a good time. It turned out to be married in Antigua, you must have a local law enforcement magistrate approve your marriage. And it turned out that formal approval required fees to be paid. There was the official fee, and our guide informed us of how much it would be. But there was also the unofficial fee, aka a bribe. We were told it's just the way it was. We were given an envelope to put the bribe money inside and handed it to the magistrate when he clearly insinuated that he had to consider the approval process, and he paused, uncomfortably waiting for something to happen, to receive his envelope. The magistrate took the envelope and he stamped the marriage approval form. It seemed odd. We had to bribe a magistrate to secure approval to be married. Oh well, despite the weird experience, we were approved to get married in Antigua. Catherine was so pretty and so beautiful as she walked to the beach where the waves crashed majestically and the world witnessed our union, forged to last forever. We were married on the beach of Antigua in the West Indies. Catherine's walk to the beach was magical. She wore a traditional white gown, her hair was styled up and regal, her smile was wide and genuine, she carried a bouquet of roses and flowers, her eyes glistened in the beach sunlight. She was amazingly beautiful and perfect. As I've said before, Catherine was perfect for me. After we exchanged our vows on the beach, yes, we exchanged our vows, symbolizing our love and commitment to each other. We vowed to always love and cherish each other that day. We vowed to be each other's beloved partner and soulmate for the rest of time. We vowed to always and forever keep due. And we exchanged rings. Keep due was the phrase that we adopted as our go-to. It was a reminder that we always have good intentions and that we will keep doing all that we can for each other, no matter what. That we will keep doing what we can to make each other's lives as good as they can be, hopefully full of joy. Following our picturesque beach ceremony and exchanging of vows, we walked to a nearby beachside gazebo right against the beach. Within the gazebo, we cut a ceremonial wedding cake symbolizing our shared life together. We toasted to our marriage and drank ceremonial champagne, symbolizing, again, celebrating life together forever. And we signed the marriage certificate, symbolizing our social and legal bond, our commitment. And we were married, husband and wife. I believe all relationships should have special moments in life. Simple, easy to recall, powerful phrases, all to remind and reinforce our commitment and love between us. I would reinforce ongoing to Catherine. I would say daily how much I love and care for her. I would write, "I heart you infinitely," with exclamation points and underscores, etc. all over, infinity symbols and the like. If we ever had a boat, we imagined that we would call it the Keep Due. Keep Due was our thing. On one of our exploration days in Antigua, we encountered a bizarre thing, a human litter box. Yeah, next to a sidewalk adjacent to a fence was a pit of sand. A picture of Disney's Mickey Mouse was painted on the fence next to the sand pit. And there was writing in English, "Pee and poo here," with a big arrow pointing down to the sand. Literally, we discovered Disney's Mickey Mouse, his human litter box in Antigua. I guess Disney really does manage crap. Who would have imagined that Disney's Mickey Mouse had a human litter box all together in the West Indies? Disney was apparently associated with poo and pee. Oh, and I doubt, though, in truth, that anyone in Antigua licensed Mickey Mouse from Disney, so I am confident it was just a fun, unofficial human litter box, likely making fun and play with a real problem: public pooping and urination. During one of our adventurous excursions in Antigua, we went on an all-day catamaran trip. The catamaran was huge, able to carry over 24 people, and it had its own dinghy to allow shore trips without grounding the massive catamaran. Well, we had been sailing for a few hours when we came upon a small island where we were to take the dinghy to its shore and enjoy a lunch. Upon finishing our food, we were to return to the catamaran. Well, here's what really happened to us. That did not happen as planned. The dinghy did make several trips to ferry people from the big catamaran to the island. When Catherine and I had our turn to go ashore in the dinghy, it sank. Yeah, on our honeymoon cruise on a catamaran, our dinghy sunk going ashore to the small island for lunch. We managed to get the dinghy to shallow enough water for us to stand and drag its sunken remnants to the shore. We were stranded on a tiny island in the West Indies. And there were no other dinghies or way back to the large catamaran. While we had no idea how we were going to be rescued or get off the tiny island, we did have rum and punch and sandwiches and chips that were planned for the lunch. We joked and we tried to make the best of an absurd situation. And then it rained. It rained down on us so hard, cats and dogs hard, as the saying goes. Eventually, we saw another tour boat come near the island, and we all waved our hands and screamed for rescue. They saw us, and they sent a dinghy to rescue us. They ferried us back to our home base catamaran. We were wet from the sunken dinghy and from the rain that had begun to pour down on us like cats and dogs. Indeed, we had become two very cold, very wet cats on a catamaran. That was one of our highlights from our honeymoon in Antigua. Although it may have sounded like a horrible experience, and in some ways it was certainly distressing. However, hell difficulty the experience it may have been, but it was high adventure, and it became a unique memory. It was just another little bit larger than ordinary life tale. I guess it goes to show you, you can focus on the trials and tribulations and the troubles thrown at you in life, or you can embrace the adventure of it and celebrate your overcoming and triumphing over all of them. Our challenges showed how we focused on the adventure to triumph, not on the trials, tribulations, and troubles. Two things that have been important to hold close each and every day. The Hebrew phrase, "I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine." It underscores Catherine and my relationship and reinforces my love for her, my angel and darling, my Catherine. It also, another quote that stands to me is important. Assume good intentions. We all do and say things that we do not intend at times, or what we say is misunderstood or misinterpreted. It is important to not judge harshly your partner. Instead, assume it is simply a misunderstanding and strive to get to the heart of the matter and forgive and move on. Avoid and accommodate hurt feelings. I will always be Catherine's dedicated true knight, even if I may be a worn true knight.